Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are talking about one of my favorite historical ships in game. That is the Tier 6 Premium British battleship, the Warspite. Now, today's video we're going to be talking mostly about the history of the Warspite. We will of course talk about what she's like in today's World of Warships, but this video is going to be more akin to the Texas video that we had a couple of weeks ago. So that's what you're in for in today's video. Just want to give you guys a heads up at the beginning here. So let's go ahead and get started because we got a lot to go over with the Warspite, otherwise known as the Grand Old Lady. So the Warspite was a member of the Queen Elizabeth class of battleships. Now this was a bit of a, well, not a bit, it was a very revolutionary design when it came to dreadnoughts. These ships were powered by oil-fired boilers rather than coal-fired boilers, and these ships had 15-inch guns, which were the biggest guns mounted on a battleship at the time. So already from the get-go, she's quite a remarkable ship. And they were generally considered to be the best capital ships afloat at the time. The Bayern class that Germany was cranking out at the time was considered to be pretty comparable to the Warspites, to the Queen Elizabeths, but there were much fewer of those than there were of the Queen Elizabeth classes. So yeah, Royal Navy has a leg up going already. The Warspite herself was laid down on October 21st, 1912 at the Devonport Royal Dockyard, so her birthday is right around the corner, about a month after this video is going to come out. She was launched on November 26th of 1913 and later completed in April of 1915, 1 year before Jutland, which was her first major engagement. So Warspite herself was assigned to the 5th Battle Squadron, which was then temporarily assigned to Vice Admiral David Beatty's battle cruiser force. Then on May 31st, Warspite was deployed with the squadron to the Battle of Jutland, which this was the largest naval battle between Imperial Germany and the Royal Navy during the war. So, after all the clunkiness that went on with the Battle of Jutland, Warspite and the other battleships were found lacking behind the battle cruiser force and found themselves under attack. Warspite herself managed to score her first ever hit in battle during this engagement, which is on the German battle cruiser, the Von der Tann, which is now in game as well, which is pretty cool. So after this, the 5th Battle Squadron headed north, exchanging fire with both Hipper's battlecruiser force and Scheer's battleships, damaging another German battleship, the Markgraf, which I think I said that right. Apologies, German listeners. When making maneuvers to rejoin with the Grand Fleet, Warspite was struck in the port wing engine room, which jammed her rudder. She continued in a circle, which caused her to inadvertently draw fire away from the very much wounded armored cruiser Warrior. After making repairs, the crew regained control of Warspite after about 2 full circles of this. However, she found herself on a course toward the German fleet. Warspite stopped for 10 minutes so the crew could make repairs, correcting the problems that the ship had, well, as much as they could correct in the middle of the Battle of Jutland. After repairs were made, the ship was maneuverable once again. However, she would be plagued with steering oddities for the rest of her career. As the sun began to set, the Grand Fleet crossed ahead of the German battle line, opened fire, which forced the High Seas Fleet to retreat and allowed Warspite to disengage and slip away. During the Battle of Jutland, Warspite was hit 15 times, 14 were killed and 16 were wounded, which included one Walter Yo, who became one of the first men in history to receive facial reconstruction or plastic surgery to treat his wounds. On her way back to Britain, she came under attack from a U-boat. The U-boat fired 3 torpedoes, but all of them missed their target. Warspite later attempted to ram a surface U-boat. It wasn't known if this was the same U-boat that had attempted to torpedo her. However, after the attempted ramming, no more U-boats were sighted and she made it back home safely. After the Battle of Jutland, Warspite didn't see much more action. However, she had several, shall we say, mishaps during the rest of the First World War. She collided with Valiant during a night shooting exercise, which, again, she had to return back to port for more repairs. She then collided with a destroyer in 1917, but fortunately that one didn't require any major repairs. She joined the Grand Fleet in a unfortunate fruitless pursuit of the German High Seas Fleet, and then one of her boilers caught on fire in 1918, so quite some excitement there. On November 21st of the same year, Warspite took part in the escorting of the Germans' high seas fleet into internment at Scapa Flow after the signing of the armistice that ended the Great War. Now, in between the wars, Warspite was greatly overhauled, especially between her 1934 and 1937 refit. As we discussed in previous historical videos, we of course had the naval treaties, which limited the construction of new capital ships to a certain tonnage and to a 14-inch main battery. Warspite of course exceeded both of these categories. However, since she was already constructed, she was grandfathered in. So like we've talked about with other dreadnoughts at this time, she was hyper modernized. She received major refits to her superstructure, machinery spaces, rangefinders, and such. And this is of course the Warspite that we have in game today, the modernized Warspite with that very distinct superstructure and armored citadel around what used to be her triple mast superstructure. Like if you see the New York's, even the Queen Elizabeth, I believe the A-hull has this tri-mast superstructure, and then of course once you get to the B-hull, you've got the modernized armored superstructure. So yeah, quite a rapid modernization and very distinct superstructure after this refit. Now her first battle during the Second World War would be the Second Battle of Narvik, where she, bullied quite a few German vessels in this engagement. So she was escorting convoy HX-9, which was carrying fuel from Nova Scotia to the UK, where she was diverted northwards to pursue the two German battleships Scharnhorst and Eisenau, but unfortunately she failed to make contact with the pair. In April of 1940, Warspite had started to transit to the Mediterranean when the Germans invaded Denmark and Norway. She was then reassigned to the home fleet on April 10th and proceeded toward Narvik. It was here where her Swordfish float plane sank the German U-boat U-64 with 250-pound bombs, and this was the first aircraft to sink a U-boat during the war. Now, it was here when crossing a headland that Warspite came across the German destroyer Z-13, which was already wounded. However, at the exceptionally close range of 2.5 kilometers, Warspite opened up with a full broadside. Now, since, as most of you battleship players know, 15-inch guns tend to overpin lightly armored targets like, the Z-13. And they did. However, since they're still 15-inch guns, the sheer force from the shells pushed the ship over on its side each time it was hit. Although the shells didn't detonate, of course, 15-inch holes going through your destroyer is not very conducive to a long service life of that destroyer. And although the blasts themselves didn't sink the destroyer, it certainly sealed the fate of the Z-13, which was later scuttled by the crew via depth charges being detonated in the machinery spaces of the Z-13. After the Second Naval Battle of Narvik was considered a success, the Warspite stuck around in Norwegian waters for some time, providing shore bombardments around Narvik. She was then redeployed to the Mediterranean, where she was originally heading on April 28th. It was here where the Battle of Calabria took place, where the Warspite engaged the Italian battleships Giulio Cesare and the Conte di Cavour. During this battle, Warspite managed to pull off one of the longest range gunnery hits from a moving ship to another moving ship in history, hitting Giulio Cesare at around 24 kilometers. Now, the other one would be the Scharnhorst hitting Glorious at around the same distance in June of 1940. The shell from Warspite pierced Giulio Cesare's aftmost funnel and detonated inside of it, blowing a hole of about 20 foot across the stack. The fragments of the smokestack fell down into the boiler rooms, which forced 4 boilers offline, as the operators of these boilers couldn't breathe, as well. That's what a smokestack's meant to achieve, and when they get blown up, they're not too good at taking smoke out of the boilers anymore. Since the Italians were uncertain of how severe the damage was, the Giulio Cesare and the Conte di Cavour pulled off from their engagement with the Warspite, as HMS Royal Sovereign and Malaya were en route to reinforce the Warspite. During the Battle of Cape Matapan, Warspite participated in the battle, of course, and also the pursuit of the Italian battleship, the Vittorio Veneto, which had managed to deter the British cruisers from engaging the rest of the Italian fleet. However, the Veneto managed to slip away as night fell. But the Warspite, the Valiant, and the Barham managed to engage the heavy cruisers, Fiume and Zara, and managed to sink these along with 2 other destroyers at point-blank range at night with the help of searchlights. Now, during the Battle of Crete, Warspite was mostly used as a floating AA battery, and like several other ships during this battle, she succumbed to quite severe damage from the Luftwaffe. A 500-pound bomb damaged her starboard 4-inch and 6-inch batteries, ripped open a giant hole in the ship's side, and killed 38 men. The damage was deemed to be so severe that she was sent to the United States for major repairs. After her repairs and refit, she was sent to the Indian Ocean and acted as the flagship of Admiral Sir James Somerville, who had previously commanded her in 1927. Apart from hunting Japanese elements in the Indian Ocean, she also covered the landings. She also provided shore bombardments for the Battle of Madagascar in September, and then returned to the UK in May of 1943. While providing gunfire support for the Allied invasion of Sicily and Italy, the Warspite was attacked by a Luftwaffe squadron of Focke-Wulf FW-190s along with 3 Dornier Do 217s, armed with an early guided bomb, the Frix X. 3 Frix X's were dropped on her. Only one hit her directly. The second one sheared open a hole in her torpedo bulges, and then the third one missed altogether. However, the bombs that did hit her struck a hole in her funnel, cut through the deck, and made a 20-foot hole in the bottom of her hull, which crippled the ship. And although this was a major hit to the Warspite, her casualties were actually quite low, with only 9 killed and 14 wounded. She was towed to Malta by U.S. Navy tugs, which, potentially foreshadowing her future, had quite difficulty towing the ship. Her line snapped one time during the stage, and she drifted through the Straits of Messina. However, she did eventually reach Malta on 19th of September and underwent repairs. Then was towed to Gibraltar in November 12th. Then she was returned to Britain in March of 1944 to continue her repairs back at Rosyth. Due to the damage of the bombs, one of her boilers and the X-turret could not be repaired, and both of these were out of action for the rest of her career. At 5 o'clock in the morning on June 6, 1944, Warspite was the very first ship to open fire on German-occupied France, in support of the British 3rd Division on Sword Beach. After firing over 300 shells, by June 7th, she had to rearm and cross the channel to Portsmouth. She then returned to Normandy on June 9th to support American forces at Utah Beach, and then on June 11th, she took up positions off of Gold Beach to support the British 69th Infantry Brigade. On June 12th, she returned to rearm once again. However, her guns were too worn out, and she was ordered to Rosyth again via the Straits of Dover to replace her guns. And now, with a boiler out, and also experiencing troubles with her propeller shafts, in addition to the steering problems that she had, the Admiralty considered her main role to be that of a bombardment platform. And this is what she did for the rest of the war. She acted as a bombardment platform for occupied France, and her final action was to support the attempt to open up the port of Antwerp. On November 1st, 1944, she fired her guns for the last time and returned to Deal the next day. After the war, she was decommissioned, and there were many a proposal to retain her as a museum ship. However, the Admiralty approved Warspite's scrapping in July of 1946. However, en route, she encountered a storm and broke free of her tugs once again in a final act of defiance. However, she ran aground in Prussia Cove. She eventually beached off of St. Michael's Mount, and after some effort moved 130 feet closer to the shore, and in 1955, on-site scrapping began. And thus ends the tale of the Warspite. And again, Royal Navy, if there's one ship you could have saved from this war to make a museum ship out of, she would have been it. But unfortunately, that did not happen. So how's the ship in game? Well, she lives up to her reputation quite well. She is one of the best premiums in the game, in my opinion, hands down. By far, in my opinion, the best Tier 6 premium battleship that you can get. And she was introduced quite a long time ago in the game's history. Well before the concept for the British battleships was even a thing, apparently, by her designs. She has very accurate 15-inch guns for her tier. She has a normal battleship AP. So for Tier 6, you have 15-inch guns, which can overmatch pretty much anything that you're going to see at Tier 6. And they're very accurate, especially by Tier 6 battleship standards as well. This also means that when you do get up-tiered in this ship, you stand a pretty darn good fighting chance against Tier 8s because you have accurate 15-inch guns. Now, of course, her armor doesn't stand up that well to Tier 8 ships. She is a bit chunky, but she is equipped with the Warspite heel, which is an improved heel. it heals way more HP than other tier 6 battleships heals do. And you'll hear me refer to ships with improved heals as having a Warspite heal, because she was the first ship to have this type of improved heal. It's not the super heal that the Conqueror gets by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't reprint half of the ship, well, 3/4 of the ship's health in one go. It does reprint quite a bit if it's, like HE damage, or well, not HE damage, if it's fire damage or flooding damage. But of course, if you eat a bunch of citadels, which the ship's really difficult to citadel, but of course, if you do eat dirt, it won't help you there like the Conqueror's heal will. And she's quite quick and maneuverable for being a tier 6 battleship as well. And she's aged quite well, in my opinion. This is one of those old ships that they just had an excellent formula for her. There's nothing really super gimmicky about her. The heal's the most gimmicky thing about her, and it's even not what she's designed around. It doesn't define how you play the ship. Sure, you can play it more aggressively with that heal, but it's not like, again, the Conqueror's heal where you can reprint your ships. She's aged very well, and I would recommend, if you're thinking about picking her up, to pick her up. She's a pretty darn good British battleship commander trainer, and it's just wonderful to see a historical ship like the Warspite treated in such a way in game to where she performs well in game and lives up to her name, unlike some more recent historical ships that we've gotten in game that unfortunately aren't that great. So guys, that's the Warspite, a look back at her history and a brief look at her in game. Let me know if you guys like these historical type of videos and would like to see more of them in the comments down below. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 40,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday, have a wonderful rest of your week, and hope to catch you guys in the next one.